In this video we're going to be looking at Supabase triggers, what they are, what we use them for, and a couple of applications we can do. So we're going to start off by looking at examples, and then we'll move on and build one in real time and see how it works. So when we're talking about triggers, what we mean is when an action is performed in a table, such as your users table or your auth schema, and we have a trigger that performs an action such as a function, which is what we're going to look at now, and what we can do with them, and they're pretty powerful. So if we head off to Flutterflow first, because the obvious one is when a new user signs up, and that's the first example I'm going to use. So now I know nobody that watches this will probably be using Flutterflow, but it's just an example of how you can use a trigger when a user signs up. So if we go to create account, when a user signs up to your app, it says it on the right hand side. With the Supabase auth, we've got set up create account and then navigate to login. But when they create account, what happens is the information we are adding to our fields on our create account page, that's what our user is created with in the auth schema in Supabase, and it doesn't do anything for your public users table. So if you've got a table that you're using for the general use of your app, such as profile pictures and user preferences, their favorites, anything to do with what your users' information, how they use your app, that is what you put in your public users table likely. And we need to automatically create our user when they sign up to our apps. So in the case of Flutterflow, what happens is we create the account in the auth schema, and what we do then is we trigger a function that creates a new record in our public users table, and that's where we're using the triggers in this instance. So as you can see, the trigger is after an insert when something happens on the users table, and we're running the function update public users. So if we go to our SQL editor and we find the public users function, which we're currently on, basically what happens is when we perform the trigger, so in triggers or schema, we call the function update public users, which is just a standard SQL function. And what that does, it creates a new value in our public users table, and in this instance we are adding their user ID, their email, whether it's their first login, we're adding as true. So that helps with the onboarding when they get to the next stage. And then we're adding a profile picture URL, and we've got a default picture there, so that's the URL within the Supabase storage for the default picture. And we've got their purpose as unknown, because this is for a job board app. So we've got two types of user, we've got a job seeker and a employer. And what will happen is once they've gone through the onboarding, that gets changed to what type they are, but in the first instance we're changing it to unknown. So what I'm saying is when a user is created in the auth schema, our trigger calls this function automatically, and we are creating a user in our users table. And that's a simple way of using a trigger. You don't even have to do anything in Flutterflow because it's all done in Supabase. So when you create your new record with your create account action here, automatically your record is then created in here, because we're calling it, we're doing it with this function that is called when this trigger is called. And that's basically what we're doing. And as usual, the code snippets for the function for creating the new user in the public users table will be available to download down below, and also the one to actually create the trigger itself. So we're creating a new trigger, and it's after an insert on the auth users table, and then for each new row is inserted, we execute the public users function, which is this one. So basically, once again, the trigger is after an insert on the auth users table, we execute the public users function, and that is this one, which creates a new row in the public users table, which you can then use in your applications. So that's method number one of using triggers, and like I say, code will be available below. Now you can use these for all sorts of things. So anytime you update a table, anything you can think of that may require something to be triggered automatically, you can use it for. So my next example that I'm using in this application is when a new job seeker signs up, and what we're doing then, we are sending a text message to employers in their region that they've signed up, so they can go and look at it. Because one of the options is that you can view candidates that are registered, and so when a new candidate registers in their region, they'll get a text message to say there's a new candidate in your region, you may well go and have a look. So if we go to that one, right, so this one works slightly differently. So this function is being called by the trigger. So if we go to the database and go to triggers, in the public schema, after there's a users update, so it's after an update on this one, and the function we're calling is new job seeker, and it's on the users table again. So what we're doing in this one, the update we're looking for is purpose. So we've got employer or job seeker. So when somebody's gone through their onboarding, they will choose if they're an employer or job seeker for the purposes of their registration. And if there's a new job seeker in the region, so what we're doing, we're checking the job seeker's country, and we're checking the employer's country, and any employer that shares the region, i.e. the country, with the job seeker, they're going to get a text. So if we go back here, so basically our function is new job seeker, and we're declaring a variable new country. And what we're doing, when a user updates their record, so this won't be a new record, it's an update because we already created the record when they register. This is after the onboarding process. So what we're doing, we are selecting their country from public users into the new country variable, and if the purpose is job seeker, i.e. if they're a new job seeker, we are calling another function which is messaging employers, and we're passing the variable of the new country to the message the employers function, basically. So if we go to the message employers function, now I'm not going to go over this line by line because I did a whole video on sending SMS messages, but what we're doing, we are fetching into the phone numbers array, which is the array phone numbers, which we're passing into our HTTP request here. Oh, sorry, we're passing into our HTTP request here, which is the phone numbers variable. We're selecting their phone number into the phone numbers array from the auth.users table, because that's where the phone numbers are stored, where in the public.users table their country equals the new country, i.e. the new country we're passing into this function, and their purpose is an employer. Then what happens is then we'll have the array of phone numbers, and they'll get a text message that says a new candidate in registering region, please visit your dashboard to view the details. And that's going to the Cinch API, which, like I say, there's a video I've done on that, which will be linked to it on the screen somewhere now. So basically that's what we're doing on this one. So it's quite a good one. So it just automates the process. When if somebody signs up that an employer may be interested in, they will get a text message say go and have a look. But that in itself isn't important for the purpose of this. What's important is we are automating a process. So that's what triggers all about. If you've any time that you've got a record get updated on your tables or inserted or deleted or whatever, you can then create a trigger on the action to then perform something. And obviously sending a message on an update is an obvious use. Creating new users in the users table when they sign up is an obvious use. And you can think of all kinds of applications where this might be useful. So for instance, if you've got a application that is for recording training plans, which again, if you watch the videos, you've seen this one kicking about. Somebody creates a new training plan, and we've got different types of plans here. If someone creates a new training plan, you can send your users a notification that there's a new training plan available for them to look at if they want to use it, that kind of thing. So it's great for notifications, and it's great for user records and updating tables. Okay, so we are going to create one of these now on the fly. We'll do it live just to see how they're done. And we have got our scoreboard from our movie trivia game. So this is the movie trivia game I built in the second of those two videos. There was two videos, the beginner step by steps, and this was from the second one where we introduced the scoreboard element of it. So link to that will be somewhere around the screen now, so if you want to go and check that one out, you can. So what we need to do is create a trigger that calls a function. So we go to our SQL editor, and you see we've got a couple of functions here that are for retrieving the random questions, which are no use to us at this particular point. So I'm going to create a new trigger in here that's going to call an SQL function. So we want to create trigger after new score, and then it would be after insert on public dot scoreboard. So what we're doing, we're creating a trigger called after new score, and if I go to table editor, we've got a scoreboard table, and what we're saying is on an insert we are going to trigger the function basically. So that's basically when a new row is created and we want to execute function, and we've got to call a function and name. It'll be, call it update top, which will be update top score. Okay, so we don't yet have an update top function, as you can see. That's what we're going to create in a minute. So if we go into the database and functions, we don't yet have the function of just, what did I call it there? We don't yet have update top. So we need to create another function. We need to do that first, because if we run this, basically we get an error because we don't yet have that function. So we need a new query. Okay, so this is the function that we are using to test if we are getting the highest score. So that this is what the trigger will, and will activate basically. What we're doing, we are selecting the maximum value from the score column into our highest score variable from the scoreboard table, and then essentially what we're doing, we're updating the table and setting highest to true, highest being the true or false values in the column, which we're going to go and do in a second, and we're setting the score basically, so where the score equals highest score, so where the score in the column equals the high score in the variable. When we've selected all those, that's the one we're going to set to true, which is the highest. That's how it should work, and we can now go and set those values up in the table. So highest, and that's going to be a true or false. Okay, what we're going to do is set all those. Well, that one will set to true, and the rest of those will be false, because what we're going to say is, for the purposes of this, that whichever one is the highest score, we're going to call it true. And what we can do then, we can use that true or false value. We can then query this from our Flutterflow apps or whatever particular application framework you're using. And what we'll do is, when our user boots up their game, we can tell them who the current highest score holder is, because obviously other players, which is why this is being done on Trigger, because other players playing on different in their own instance of the app on their own device, be filling in the scoreboard. So Thanos 24, for instance, may get a 20, and then that will then change to true. That's the hope. So if we insert a new row, and we'll call it player 1, and they've scored 22. You know, the game only allows you to score 20, but Supabase obviously doesn't know that. Let's save that. And there you go. The trigger has worked, and we've got player 1 is now the highest score, and then there's a false, and we'll just check that again. Username, let's go player 2, and they've scored 24. And there we go. They're now the highest player. So basically what's happening is we're changing the value of this on the addition of the new record, and if the record is higher, it goes to true. So we'll do one more time, and we'll call it player 3, and they're going to score 18, and see, it's false because the player 2 is still at the top score. So that's it really. You can then obviously call these values into your game and display them to your players. That's kind of the point, but it's really just to display the trigger and how it works in live, rather than just showing you the ones that I've done previously. So hopefully that's something you can go and use in new projects. It's really, really useful for all kinds of things, especially notifications. So thank you for watching as always, and I'll speak to you next time.